Why do I do shadow work? Um, I do shadow work because I don't have a choice. it's not it's not really a decision for me to do it because it's what I always do and what I have been doing with myself since I was conscious enough to do so. Even though at the time when I was a teenager back then, I didn't know that it had a name. I didn't know that it had a name, shadow work, for a very long time. So it really started when I was about 15 years old, when I started becoming more conscious, I think like a lot of us do. And I started getting really fascinated, obsessed with the biggest questions in human existence, like what is consciousness? What is reality? What is truth? What is knowledge? And so I started to read philosophy voraciously, like at that really young age. And at the same time, when I was 15, I remember very distinctly the summer I was 15, that must have been like 2000 or 2001, I started having ultra violent nightmares. And keep in mind, I was a suburban, high achieving, good girl who was extremely sheltered from violence, you know? And so these nightmares, and I'll spare you the details, but these super, super graphic, gory nightmares puzzled my mom. They puzzled anybody I told about them. They didn't actually frighten me, but my mom, being concerned, um, wanted me to go to therapy about them, and she actually took me to a Jungian psychoanalyst um, to do dream work with her. And I was blessed that I had a mom who knew about Jungian dream work. And so I went to this psychoanalyst, I think just a few times because it wasn't helpful to me to put all these different concepts and archetypes on these experiences I was having, these dreams I was having. But what I did do that helped was I had an intuitive knowing that if I painted the dream images in all of their graphicness, that would help. And that's what I ended up doing. And so to this day, I have these old paintings of mine of all these graphic scenes that I did at that age. And the magic was that as soon as I fully and completely leaned into these images and painted them like with excruciating detail, they went away. The dreams went away. And I stopped going to therapy about my dreams and kept reading. I kept reading about the unconscious mind. I got into this obsession with everything unconscious, everything Carl Jung, everything Freud, everything German idealist philosophy. And that put me on a track to study philosophy. And I ended up getting a bachelor's degree in philosophy, and on the side just kept doing this personal work, kept doing this reading, and kept applying it to my own emotional states and my own developing awareness of the conditions of my childhood and the trauma there. So in that way, I've always done shadow work. I've always delved into my own subconscious and took such joy in just uncovering layer after layer after layer. And I did that throughout my academic education, my living abroad in Austria. I went to graduate school. I got a graduate degree in German, went on to have a successful academic career of 6 years, full-time at Oregon State University, teaching German and German studies. But of course, Carl Jung and all these thinkers I was obsessed with were from the German-speaking tradition, so that all fit. But I ended up, after a while, just feeling very depleted by that career. And on the side, mind you, I had been continuing this intensive study of the unconscious mind and this intense nature and ongoing nature of my own personal work, emotional work, delving into my own psyche, and doing actually astrology readings on the side, kind of in the closet as an academic, because in academia you can't talk about that. So I ended up realizing one day that I noticed myself getting hopeless, that despite all of the recognition I'd gotten as a faculty member, all the awards I'd won. I was on the cover of an Oregon State magazine once because of my awards and my accomplishments for Oregon State and their online program, the online education program in particular. But it's like all of that never filled me one bit. And I realized that what really filled me was when students would come to my office hours, and I would always seem to attract the students who were emotionally struggling, who were struggling with depression or parental relationships or something, or self-doubt, their own path in life, and they would tell me, I had multiple students tell me that I helped them more than their therapist did, just in seeing them and talking to them, that they got something out of talking to me. So of course, being in the academic mode that I was, what I thought was, oh, maybe I'm meant to be a counseling psychologist, or a mental health counselor. So long story short, I moved back to Seattle, where I'm from. I went to grad school round 2 in counseling psychology at Bastyr University. And on the side, at that time, my intuitive gifts were developing really intensely, like my psychic gifts, my healing abilities, and I was getting really curious about that. So that was happening parallel to my education in counseling psychology. And I had also done training before going into this other program. Again, on the side of my academic career, I'd done training as a certified yoga teacher, specifically in trauma-sensitive yoga. And I'd done workshops on trauma healing and trauma healing through movement and resilience building, capacity building. And one of the things that shocked me about this program in counseling psychology, and actually most programs, is that there wasn't much of any education about trauma and the physiology of trauma and trauma healing. And so that was just one factor that contributed to my decision to leave counseling school after about 6 months, with the blessing of the program and some professors there who helped me make that decision, because not only did I want that emphasis, I wanted to learn more about trauma, but I was realizing that with my budding intuition and the ways I was helping people on the side, I realized that I was actually having to forget a lot of what I was learning in school to do my actual work, to do the work that I saw helping people all the time and very deeply and very quickly. And I started to get uncomfortable as well with the model of counseling psychology that is something like addiction, that you go and you see a counselor for perhaps years, when I knew very well through my own experience, my own healing in my life, that there were so many modalities outside of the box of mental health counseling that work so fast by comparison, that are so effective and so far-reaching. And so I started to get really frustrated and made the very, very difficult decision for me as a former academic to forego getting that credential. And part of me was terrified, because I thought, what am I going to put on the backs of my books, right? I'm not going to be able to put MA counseling psychology. So it was a big decision for me to leave counseling school. And then I started with a lot of help from friends at the time in the intuitive community, and lots of support. I ended up continuing to help people, and then eventually in a paid capacity, and getting this amazing validation, this feedback, these testimonials from people who had benefited from my facilitation of their healing process. And so that was about 3 years ago now that I started working professionally and making that my full-time career. And then eventually I was calling myself an intuitive emotional healer at the time, but I didn't believe actually that I could heal anybody, because I believe we're all our own healers, and intuitive emotional just wasn't wasn't sitting right. So I asked my spirit guides one night to give me the true name of my work. And this was before I went to bed, and I woke up in the middle of the night at about 2 a.m. with the words shadow work just loud and clear. And it just dawned on me like the most obvious thing in the world, because I had been reading Jung, Carl Jung, who's the philosophical founder of shadow work as we know it, since I was a teenager. I was like, I've known about the shadow. I've known about shadow work for most of my life, but yet it was like too close to see somehow, and my guides gave me that name. So when I made the switch to calling my business Shadow Work with Catherine Liggett, and to frame my sessions in that way, it's like everything came together, and I didn't change what I was doing with people and sessions, but having the blessing of that name just really made everything gel. And what I've noticed from just my life after so many years of doing different kinds of shadow work, now I know the name, with myself, is that my life has just gotten easeful beyond any comparison. As a trauma survivor, as someone who really struggled with absolutely abusive self-talk and self-destruction and overachieving addiction and all kinds of things, perfectionism is something I still struggle with to this day, but it used to be so acute, and it used to just take me over. And it's like, it's not that I don't experience any of that anymore at all, but when I do, it's just so, it's like this instead of like this. And that's just one of the many benefits of shadow work that's had on my life. There are so many, I could go on and on. Very prominently is I stopped attracting guys who were reflections of my father in not great ways. And I was able to attract somebody as absolutely wonderful as my current husband. And if you want to know more about relationships and shadow, I encourage you to watch my video on the subject called Relationships, Your Partner is Your Shadow, by the way. It's one of my favorite videos. And anyway, I'm just so filled with joy. My life is totally in alignment, doing what I love, and I feel sometimes strange because I feel like I'm being myself, and I'm asking people to pay me hundreds of dollars to be myself with them, but that's the way it should be. You know, life is meant to be easy. Life is meant to flow for us, and that's been one of the greatest, that's been the greatest gift of all my years of shadow work. And the good news is it doesn't have to take you, what is it, like 17 or 18 years of shadow work to get those results in your life, even though it did for me, because there was so much experimenting along the way. So thanks for listening to my synopsis of how I came into this work and why I do this work. And I hope to connect with you soon. Enjoy my channel. Bye-bye.